Well, welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. Today we're going to look at the weekly top 10. We're going to number it 10 to 1 by percentage gain, and then we'll go the other way for percentage loss. This uses all my market update information from the other videos throughout the week. If you're not a patron yet, head on over to patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG to see if it's right for you. For just $5 a month, you get access to all my data as a collection tracker. It's a great way to kind of track the value of your collection, kind of track if you have all the cards in the set, and just keep track of things. And that's not the only perk as a patron. Patrons have plenty of perks. Go ahead and look at it at the website. But if you are interested in more of my opinions on stuff, at a $15 tier, I do have a podcast called If I Were Investing, where I kind of share all the fun stuff I would be doing if I had the amount of money to invest in Flesh and Blood. But without further ado, let's hop into the top 10 winners of Flesh and Blood through this week with our top 10 cards to gain value, number 10 to 1 by percentage gain. And I did do a special update this week with Drone of Brutality. Normally I do not include the rares in this update because it's just so hard to generate what the actual prices are, but because we had so many drones sold, I will show that to you. The Drone of Brutality red version from Alpha, the normal version last week was at $4. This week I'm seeing around $18.99. That's a gain of 343%. The foil version last week you could pick it up for around $25. This week $150. That's a gain of 500%. Absolutely crazy, those of you who are buying Drones of Brutality. And for the unlimited version, it was 25 cents last week. Now it's $3.50. That's 1,300%. For the foil unlimited version for the red, it was 89 cents. This week it's $19. That's 2,033%. Again, Drone of Brutality is just a joke, I think. The yellow version Alpha, last week you could pick up a non-foil version for $1.50. This week they're selling for $25. That's a 1,500% growth. And the foil version, last week you could pick it up for $35. This week I'm seeing it sell around $85. That's a gain of 242%. Again, these are going to drop down is my belief. But the unlimited edition at 25 cents last week, this week it's selling for $2.97. That's 1,000% gain. And the foil version was 50 cents last week. This week it sold for $21.99, 4,298%. This was the highest gaining version of the Drone of Brutality, actually. And the blue version, last week Alpha sold for $1.25. This week was $25. That's a 1,900% growth. For the foil Alpha version, that was a $25 card last week. Now it's $100. It's a gain of 400%. And I would anticipate that if anything sticks, it'll be the Alpha versions of these cards, not the unlimited. But the unlimited normal version of the blue was 20 cents last week. This week it's $3.15. That's a 1,400% growth. And the foil version was 47 cents, and this week is selling for $15, a gain of 3,091%. Again, we are not going to be tracking these all the time. We might track them for a couple weeks to see how they fit into the market updates and see what happens. But let's get to the regular market update, the regular top 10 without Drone of Brutality involved. And in 10th place, we have Crazy Brew. And of course, Crazy Brew, this is the Alpha normal version. This is not the Rainbow Foil version. Last week, this card was sitting around $13. This week, it's sold for $20. That's a gain of 54%. And here's the thing about Crazy Brew. This is such an iconic card in Flesh and Blood. That's why I put the card, the artwork, or kind of a call out to it in my artwork, in my playmat. And it's just one of those cards that's not played a ton, but it is a card that is iconic and people want it. And it being a alpha version, it was just undervalued compared to the other supers last week. And things are starting to move as people start realizing there is still gains to be made on this market. And at number 9, we have the Harmonized Kadachi. This is the cold foil version, of course, from Crucible of War First Edition. Last week, this card was sitting at $90. This week, it's at $140. That's a gain of 55%. And a lot of these rare cold foils are on the move from Crucible of War as the set continues to age well and the date kind of continues to shift from when it went out of print and when a lot of the buyouts happened of the first edition product. And so what you're going to start seeing is that cards are going to start setting a new price point and all the cards are going to kind of follow suit. And Harmonized Kadachi being played in the kind of most predominant deck is just one of the first cards to move up in value at a higher rate than the rest of them. At number 8, we have Breaking Scales. This is a alpha cold foil common, and I've been talking about the cold foil commons for a while now. But last week this card had moved up to 207. This week we saw a sold listing at 325. That's a gain of 57%. And again, this goes back to Ira being one of the most predominant decks in the meta, and that just kind of makes these cards more significant, and they move before the other ones move. We will see another cold foil card coming up, but this is the top cold foil common, and it's very interesting to see these keep moving up, and it will be seeing the way that the market moves will be dependent upon the meta as well. All right, let's go to number 7. Speaking of the meta, Mask of Momentum last week sold for $1,838, $1,838. This week sold for $3,000. This is the Alpha Edition cold foil. That's a gain of 63%. And again, I know that collectors don't necessarily care about the meta if they're not playing, but the fact of the matter is that the meta changes and dictates what is a card that is iconic. And Mask of Momentum, I mean, it has all the factors. It's got the artwork, it's got the meta, and it's got the rarity. And so this card was it was primed to shoot up in value, and now we have seen it shoot up to 3,000 following the Spring Tunic by about $2,000. Number 6, we got the Fiend Death. Last week, this is the first edition rainbow foil version. Last week, this card was sitting at $12. This week, it's at $20. That's a gain of 67%. And what you're going to start seeing here in this update is that a lot of people are targeting these Ranger cards. Ranger has been so underused and underutilized, but a lot of people think that Monarch is going to make it stronger as you kind of see some additional arsenal support and some other things happen. And so people are starting to target these, I think, a little bit in anticipation that there might be some gains. So this is not the last Ranger card that you're going to see on this list. And of course, first edition rainbow foils are all moving up. Speaking of first edition rainbow foils, this one's from Arc though. This has become the Arc Knight in number 5 slot today. Last week it was sitting at $43. This week's at $75. That's a gain of 75%. And you know what? This is another one of those kind of iconic cards. The artwork is fantastic. It's kind of got a lot of things going for it. But honestly, at $43 last week, I think it was just kind of a mispriced card. It was a sold listing that was just not sold by a seller who really knew exactly the value of the card, or maybe it was an auction. I can't exactly remember. And the auction just didn't get enough support. So I think really this is in line with more of the other super rares now. And at number 4, we have Sand Sketch Plan. This is the Alpha Edition normal non-foil. Last week was sitting at $4. This week's at $7. That's a gain of 75%. And honestly, I'm not sure exactly why this card is moving up. I will say that Rhinar has gotten a little bit more play lately, and it seems like that is a potential fringe deck that is entering the meta a little harder. And maybe people saw the price at $4 and were like, hey, I need to buy the card anyway. What's the difference of $2 or $3 if I'm getting the first edition? And that may have been what caused this card to spike up in price. I don't think you're ever going to see an alpha normal print version reaching any significant gains, but $3 is the change here. That's a gain of 75%. And then another Rhinar card in number 3 slot. This is Alpha Rampage, but this is the Alpha Edition Rainbow Foil. Last week it was sitting at $225. This week it sat at $550. That's a gain of 144%. And you know what? The thing here is that the card is just, it's sold on TCG Player, and it's just hard to find the price of all these cards when you only have a sold listing every 2-3 months of each specific card. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that what we usually see with these high spike cards is that they typically retrace back to the normal price of the Majestic Rainbow foils. And at number 2, we have Poison the Tips. This is another Ranger card, first edition rainbow foil from Crew. Last week it was sitting at $10. This week it's at $25. That's a gain of 150%. And again, everything that I said about Feign Death is applicable to Poison the Tips. It is a Ranger card. People are speccing on Ranger cards right now with anticipation that the cards get better in Monarch. And again, you can't pick up this card in first edition rainbow foil for any less than it was available last week, because they're not going to open more of them. People aren't going to be cracking Crew boxes as rapidly as they were at one point. So I think that's kind of why those Ranger cards are moving up, specifically the first edition rainbow foils. And then at number 1, we have Showtime. This is the Alpha Edition Rainbow Foil. Last week we had this card slotted at $20, and this week it's at $100. That's a gain of 400%. But keep in mind that the card that sold last week was almost an error listing on eBay. The card had been selling for around $70 kind of consistently over the last couple months, and so $20 was a steal for the person who purchased it. I actually think it was the best offer that was accepted. And such, this card we probably need to look at more as going from $70 to $100 as opposed to $20 to $100. But I'm just sharing the data for you all, the cold hard facts. All right, and now let's move on to the top 10 cards to lose value. We'll start with number 10 and go down to number 1, which will be the card that lost the most value. So in at number 10 is Endless Arrow, and this is the super rare non-foil version from first edition Arcane Rising. Last week it was sitting at $30, this week's at $24. That's a loss of 20%. I know I've been talking highly about the Ranger cards, but honestly I think what's going on in this particular card is that $30 was just too high, and this is just market kind of reacting to a high card price last week. Based on the rest of the super rares, I just don't think that the non-foil versions hold enough of a premium, and probably those who are speccing on any sort of first edition specs are going to target the rainbow foil versions anyway, and that's what you're seeing in Crew going on. And then at number 9 is Singing Steelblade. This is also a non-foil version, another non-foil super on this list. This one's from Alpha instead of first edition Arc. This is Alpha WTR. Last week the price was at $31.50. This week's at $25. That's a loss of 20%. And honestly, I know that this card is super played, and I'm guessing that a $25 ticket this week was just a mispriced by somebody on the market. And I think this card will rebound next week, being a card that is well played in a lot of the Warrior Dorinthia decks, and a kind of an iconic card as well, as you've got young Dorinthia there learning how to work with the swords. So I think that this card was just kind of a market price this week. At number 8, we have Become the Arknight. This is the normal non-foil version from first edition, and if you remember, this card was on the top gainers for the foil edition. And this is moving from $9 to $7. This is not a huge movement. That is a loss of 22%, which gives it the number 8 slot. And again, these are super rares. These are non-foil super rares. Anytime you have a card like this, there's just so many more printed. So it's just hard to gauge. This is just a sold listing at $7 as opposed to $9. That's nothing to write home about. Nothing too significant in the marketplace. I would not go kind of panic selling your Become the Arknight non-foils from first edition there. I'm guessing this is just kind of market noise. But at number 7, we do have another super rare first edition normal non-foil from this. Everything that I've said is the same in Pursuit of Knowledge here. Last week it was $9, this week it's $7. That's a loss of 22%. Again, all these things are all connected. Everything here is connected. This is just not necessarily a huge thing to write home about. This is just the market adapting, and a card sold at a lower price than it did from last week. Maybe more hit the market. Maybe somebody just was trying to sell the cards quick and get out from under them. And so I think that's what you're seeing here. These first edition normal non-foil super rares, there's just so many more of them than the rainbow foils. And then we're seeing this again, right? This is Crazy Brew. Last week it was at $81. This week's at $63. This one is the Alpha Rainbow Foil Edition. That's a loss of 23%. And I think we saw some gains on this card last week, so maybe this is just the market reconnecting itself. I also think that this was an auction, and anytime we see an auction sale, that sale price is going to end up being a little bit less than when we see a buy it now sale. So I think last week it was a buy it now price, if I'm remembering correctly, at 81, and this week was an auction price at 63. So that's kind of, that all adds into it, and this also could have been conducive of the condition of the card as well, which I think it was near mint, but who knows. All right, number 5, we have Snapdragon Scalers. This is our only cold foil to lose value this week. It went from $375 to $290. That's a loss of 23%. And honestly, $375 was probably a premature premium that somebody paid for a really nice copy or something that they were sending in to get graded. Although Snapdragon Scalers is one of those cards that it's just one of those ones that's going to be on the forefront of any market movement. But that being said, $375 compared to your average cost of one of the cold foil commons sitting at like $267 or something like that, $270, seemed a little bit steep at $375. So this is just the market kind of readjusting back down to the market price of the averages of those cards. And at number 4, we have Spark of Genius. Last week it sold for $95. This week it sold for $57. This is the first edition rainbow foil. Again, another super rare on this list. I think there's 7 of them on this list actually. And that's a loss of 40%. And there's just so many more super rares in the market that when one spikes like that up to 95, some more are going to hit the market, and then you just don't have the pull that a Majestic card or that the cold foils carry. And so what's happening is as more hit the market, the price is going to end up being less than the last sold listing because they're just not as desirable as some of the other cards in the sets. So that's why we saw something move from a high of 95 to 57. And at number 3, the first edition Rainbow Foil Read the Ledger. Now this is a Rainbow Foil Majestic, which is very interesting to see on this list. And that went from $230 to $120. That's a loss of 48%. And here's the thing, I would not advertise that you ever sell a Majestic Rainbow Foil first edition or alpha card at $120. I think that this was a mispriced card. I don't think the seller should have accepted the price, but again, I'm just sharing with you the facts. If I had one of these, I would expect to get $250 out of it. That seems to be the going rate for the class specific Majestic rainbow foils. You might be able to pull 200, I think, but 120 is too low. At number 2, we have Blood Rush Bellow. This is the Alpha Edition Normal. This is also a Majestic. And last week, this card was at $45. This week, it's at $22, which is a loss of 51%. And I don't know what to say about this one, honestly. The card is played, the brood decks are kind of moving up and forward. So maybe this was just a weird pricing or something, but honestly, $22 to $30 seems to be the average of the Majestic non-foils, the class specific one. So 45 did seem a little bit steep, so it might just be kind of a market retracement. Again, back down to seeing some of those averages of these cards in the class specific Majestics and kind of balancing out those card prices. And the number 1 card to lose value this week is the first edition Rainbow Foil. Again, super rare Forked Lightning, this time going from $90 to $40, a loss of 56%. And everything that I've said about the super rares applies to this again. $90 was a high price considering the other super rares that were class specific. And so we're seeing some retracement back down to meeting some of those averages of the other cards, as the sales of these cards are so rare that whenever one sells, it kind of really usually dictates a market price of all the cards connected. And probably that $90 sale a few weeks ago was just somebody who wanted the copy and needed it right away. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. And if you find this useful for you, go ahead and head over to my Patreon over at patreon.com/KitchenTableTCG. For $5 a month, you get access to collection trackers that give you all the data from all of my market videos. You're able to track your collection, see the value of your collection. And then if you want more of my opinions, I actually put out a new podcast last night, and that's available at a more expensive tier at $15. It's called If I Were Investing. But more and more, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching my videos and enjoying the content. And I hope you have a great day, and remember to be kind to the people around you.